Hello again and welcome back to Infinite Banking Step by Step. This is video number 9 in the series. If you missed the first 8 videos, I do suggest that you go back and start at the beginning. There'll be a link to do that in the description box below. Now, last time we looked at how you can use policy loans from your Infinite Banking style whole life policies to get out of debt, or as I say in my book, undo your debts. Today, we're going to talk on the nuts and bolts of applying for a policy and what underwriting looks like. Before you can apply for a policy, you really should have a good idea of what exactly you are applying for. So there should have been some back and forth with your agent, some discussion about different policy contract options, perhaps different life insurance carriers, different balances between the base policy and the paid up additions rider. Do you want a term rider or not? What's the consequences of having one or not? What do you think your health rating might be once you've been underwritten? Things like that. Your situation is going to be very unique compared to the next person that agent works with. So it's important to nail these things down. Now, at this stage, you don't know what your health rating or risk class is. You may have an idea. If you're a tobacco or cannabis user, then you're looking at a certain range of health ratings. If you're a non tobacco or cannabis user, you're going to have a different range of health ratings available, depending on the exact nature of the insurance carrier, their underwriting programs, etc. However, you're still just taking an educated guess. I bring that up to say you're likely going to get a different health rating than what you applied for, and that's okay. We'll talk more about how that works later in this video. Now that you have the basic structure of the policy more or less settled upon, knowing that things can vary slightly based on your final health rating, the next thing you need to do is identify and gather information on all of the people involved in the policy. The most important person when it comes to the people you need to collect data on is the insured person. That means the person that the contract is built around, the person who is going to be medically evaluated for a life insurance policy. This person, when they pass away, the policy will mature and the death benefit will be paid to the beneficiaries. You also need to identify who is the owner of the policy. Now, the owner is really the only person who can do anything with the policy. The owner is the one who can take policy loans. The owner is the one who can change the beneficiary on the policy, things like that. The insured could be the same person as the owner, but it might not be. Here's some examples. A wife might want an insurance policy on her husband, or vice versa. A parent might own a policy on their child. An adult child might own a policy on their parent. A business owner might own a policy on another partner in the business. A nonprofit organization might own a policy on a large recurring donor to that nonprofit. There are even cases where joint ownership may be appropriate. Let's say a husband and wife would like to jointly own a policy on each other. So, husband and wife both own a policy on the husband and both own a policy on the wife. There's nothing wrong with doing this. Just be aware it could cause additional paperwork because both owners need to approve any changes or policy loans. That might mean more paperwork, more signatures, things like that. Okay, next up, we need to identify who is the payor, or the person paying the premiums on this policy. Again, it may be very simple. It could be that the insured and the owner and the payor are all the same person, but it might not be, and you just need to think through this prior to your application. Okay, let's talk about beneficiaries. The first and the required level is the primary beneficiary or beneficiaries. You may want to have a husband own a policy on the wife, and the husband is the beneficiary. Easy as can be, or vice versa. However, it can get a lot more complicated than that. Let's say that the wife owns a policy on the husband, and if the husband passes away, or when the husband passes away, 90% of the death benefit pays to the wife, the surviving spouse, but the remaining 10% goes to a charity that they both want to support. That's entirely appropriate and totally fine to do. You may also want to specify what's called contingent beneficiaries. Your primary beneficiary tier will be handled if everything goes according to plan. The contingent beneficiary tier is the contingency plan. It's the, well, what if things don't quite go according to plan A plan. So in our previous example, we have the wife owns a policy on the husband passes away, and the death benefit is going to the wife, right? The check is going to be made out to the wife. But what happens if the wife passes away first? Or what happens if both husband and wife pass away at the same time? That's what contingent beneficiary plans are for. You might have a situation, say this husband and wife have 2 adult children. If something happens to both of them at the same time, they might like the death benefit to be split equally amongst the surviving children. Without the contingent beneficiary plans in place, this might go to probate court, and the court might decide who gets how much of the death benefit. If it's in writing, if it's all specified, things will go according to plan. If it's not specified, you may not like how things get divided up by someone else. Now, in addition to all of this, you will need several medical and financial details for the application. Things like net worth, household cash flows, prescriptions, medical visits in the last several years, all of those kinds of details are probably going to be needed too, particularly if you're managing some sort of chronic condition. Hopefully, by this stage, you and your agent have talked about these kinds of things and you already know what's going to be needed prior to the application. There may even be several questions that are specific to your employment or hobbies. For example, if you pilot an aircraft, either professionally or as a hobby, this is something that you'll need to gather information on. Piloting an aircraft is considered to be a hazardous occupation on some level. So you may need number of flight hours, types of aircraft that you fly, etc., etc. That's an important conversation to have so you can have all this gathered and ready to go for the application day. Long story short, the insured and the owner or owners need to provide quite a bit of information. The beneficiaries, not so much, but you do need to have, say, bank information for paying the premiums, and you need to have at least name, relationship, and date of birth for the beneficiaries. Depending on how complicated your particular situation is, this may take 25 minutes or it may take over an hour. The more you have available and ready to go prior to starting the application, the more it's going to be an easy process. Once it's all filled in, you will sign the application either on paper or digitally, and then you will have your application submitted to the insurance company. Up until this point, they haven't started doing anything. You've just been filling out paperwork. When they receive that complete application, you're now in the underwriting phase. Now, underwriting is just a fancy word to describe the process of evaluating the risk of the insured person and the financial details of the owner and payor. Now, there is a distinction between tobacco and non tobacco ratings. So you may have a range of non tobacco ratings and a range of tobacco ratings. Generally speaking, tobacco ratings are more expensive. The rate at which you can buy life insurance is It's going to be more expensive if you are a tobacco user. By the way, regular use of cannabis will also likely get you a tobacco user rating, even though it's not tobacco, strictly speaking. That's just a little nuance in the insurance world you need to be aware of if you use those types of products. Every company is going to have a slightly different set of naming conventions that they use. So you might see preferred, preferred plus, super preferred, etc., etc. Those names don't necessarily mean the same thing at different companies. So don't worry too much about that. It's just that whether there's 3 or 4 or 5 different health ratings that you might be looking at, the pricing and the specific details are going to shake out according to that company's process. And just ask your agent if you don't know what to expect. Now, if you were very detailed in completing your application and you provided all of the information that was needed for all of the different questions that were asked, you may have a good shot at accelerated underwriting. Accelerated underwriting is very common nowadays, and basically that means they'll complete the underwriting process and give you a health rating and let you move forward without the need for an in person medical exam, or what the insurance world calls a paramedical exam. Now, the standards to be in an accelerated underwriting program can be quite strict. If you have a couple of ongoing conditions that you're managing, it doesn't mean you can't get insurance necessarily. It just means you probably will have to do full underwriting. So, whether you're doing full underwriting or accelerated, the insurance company is going to pull several sets of records from different databases that are out there in the insurance world. Motor vehicle report to see if you're in frequent automobile accidents, prescription record checks, etc., etc. They may pull your credit. Just know that they're going to be looking into your overall risk profile, and if they feel they can do that without blood work, they will. It's generally best to assume that you will have full underwriting, meaning the paramedical exam will be done. This may be done at your home if you're close enough to a lab location, or you may go into a lab location to complete the paramedical exam. Sometimes you'll hear the insurance carrier or your agent call it a paramed for short. A paramed is blood work, a urine sample, height and weight, and some family and personal medical questions asked by the examiner. Now, to have the best possible showing for your paramedical exam, it's very important to fast prior to your appointment, whether that's in home or not. You want to have nothing but water for at least 8 hours, preferably more than 12 hours prior to your blood draw and urine sample. You want to be hydrated so that the blood work is easier to complete and so that you'll be able to provide a urine sample when that is requested. All in all, your paramedical appointment should only take about 20 or 30 minutes, and then that stage of the process, probably the worst part of the entire process, is over. The lab will run the tests that they need to run, provide the results to the insurance company, and by the way, you should also get access to those lab results. Make sure to follow up with your agent if you don't have that. Generally, it's a barcode label that you need to have the number from in order to create an online account and see your results. If you ended up qualifying for accelerated underwriting, you may have an approved policy in less than 1 week. If you need full underwriting, you're going to introduce some delays. If there are medical records that need to be pulled, that will create some delays. You need to expect 2 to 4 weeks on average, but sometimes even longer than that. Also, depending on the size of your policy and your age or the age of the insured person, there may be some additional steps as well, such as an EKG that will be run as part of the paramedical exam. And there's other various situations you might find yourself in. Again, it's your agent's job to provide that information to you prior to your appointment. Now, if you're underwriting a child under the age of 15, there will not be a paramedical exam, period. There can even be a few variations just based on the state that you live in, based on state specific regulations. And again, your agent should know that if they're licensed in the state, they'll walk you through any state specific steps that may be required. All in all, the application and underwriting step is really nothing to be concerned about. Just go through the steps, be as detailed and upfront as you possibly can be. The insurance company would much rather find out upfront about something than discover it themselves and feel like you're hiding things from the application process. For most people, though, this really is the most difficult part, and once it's over, you're good. I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching. In the next part of the series, we are going to look at investment funding, estate planning, really the infinite part of infinite banking, all of the different things that you may want to explore once you've established your banking system using a whole life policy. You'll see an icon on screen here in a moment that will link you to that next video in the series. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video.